Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Exploring Coaching Mastery. My name is Peter J. Redding. I'm a master coach, master trainer, and today we go into the continuing steps of a coaching engagement. In other words, from hello, what do you do for a living, to actually starting to coach. There are 6 or 7 different elements of getting into the coaching engagement. And then once in the coaching engagement, there are stages of what do we do as a professional coach, which we'll also be exploring. So welcome to today's class. Today's class specifically is doing a sample session. We'll do a live demonstration if we get a volunteer to do that. And let me get right to episode 8, Coach for Life sample session demonstration, live demo. So we've gone through several stages already. If you've missed any of these, I encourage you to go back and look at these, study them. This whole series is for people that are interested in becoming a professional coach, for those that are a professional coach, as a form of reminder or tips and techniques that I've learned over the last 25 years. It's also for people that have heard about professional coaching, but don't really understand what professional coaching is all about. And so this is my gift back to you to have you understand the depths of what a professional coach is. And if someone is calling themselves a coach, are they really a professional coach? So last week, we talked about the purpose and the structure of the sample session. Today, we're going to demonstrate that, again, with a volunteer. And as a reminder of what we went through last week, a real quick reminder, I'm just going to go through this briefly, if you were not in a session last week. So there's 3 parts to a sample session. One is the introductory portion of explaining what coaching is, at least your style or way you do coaching. We're going to spend 5 minutes on that. Then there'll be, for today's purposes, we'll be doing a 20-minute actual coaching session with a volunteer, and then a 5-minute follow-up after the coaching session in terms of, so how was that for you? What did you get? What did you gain from that? So the first piece of this is welcoming them, sharing the agenda with them, and doing a time check to make sure that they still have the time set aside of a half an hour that we had set up, presumably ahead of time. Okay. Explain the confidentiality of coaching. And then I'll talk about what coaching is. So I give a little short explanation of that and explains how the coaching elements work, of how it's different perhaps than either their concept of coaching or what they think they've done in the past that was coaching that was really perhaps mentoring or training or something else. The next stage is the actual coaching session. So, I actually say, all right, so we'll start coaching now, because what we've been doing is talking about coaching, but not really coaching yet. Go through an actual session. Bring them present, ground them, use a starter wheel if they don't already have a topic in mind. What area of life or what specific part of that area of life would you like to coach on? The what questions is basically, we ask a lot of open-ended questions that typically start with what to delve into their particular area, topic of the day. If I notice a shift of energy, then I can kind of make an observation about that. If it happens, if it doesn't happen, then I don't use that. And then finalizing the actual coaching session with, okay, so are there any action steps, or what action steps came out of this for you that you'd like to commit to, and bring the coaching session to a close. Okay, so that's the meat of the actual coaching. And then we do a little wrap up at the end for 5 minutes. I ask them about their experience. So what did you learn? What benefit did you get or receive from this session? Share your interest in coaching them if that's appropriate, and not doing that if it's not appropriate. And we'll talk a little bit more about that maybe after the coaching session. Ask them if they choose to enter into a coaching relationship with you. And again, that's optional. That's optional on your part. After they hang up, after the sample session is completed and the client or the prospective client has stopped and hung up from that sample session, then I encourage you to do some self-reflection as a coach, as a new coach, as a beginning coach. What did you learn as the coach in this last session? I learned that the matching or the chemistry is vitally important, and I either had that a lot with this particular client or not a lot with this particular client. That's one thing that I encourage you to kind of examine, and that's one area of learning that you might look at. I learned that if I ask 3 questions in a row, then they confuses the client or the prospective client. So anything at all, anything that comes out in terms of the way of your learning. Next question I ask myself for self-reflection, and I like journaling. I'm a huge advocate of journaling, is the idea of ask, what did I do great? What did I do great? I focus on that first and foremost. And then finally, what did I enjoy about this experience with this prospective client? I enjoyed them going deeper. I enjoyed their aha moment. I enjoyed being the space for them to explore this particular area of life. So it could be any or all of those kinds of things. And I do journaling. Like I said, I just keep track, have a coaching journal, and if that works for you. Okay, so that's a real quick, we spent a lot more time on that last week. If you haven't seen that session, it's recorded. You can find it on Facebook and on YouTube. So you can go back and listen to that. So, but that's basically the outline that I'll be using today. And all right, so Cello, do we have a volunteer that we can go into this session with?
None yet, Peter, but few of them is looking forward for the session, but feel free, everyone. Soraya?
Soraya, is she volunteering for doing a live session?
Not really, but just asking if there will be live session.
Oh yes, there will be a live session as long as we get a volunteer. And that's really the key here.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for inviting me. This is I've been following you for a while, Peter, but it's been really difficult sometimes I didn't realize you were on a Zoom, so thank you for this.
Oh, wonderful. Are you on Zoom now with me?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So are you wanting to do a live sample session with me now or not?
Is this a trick question?
No.
I'm sure there's somebody else who would volunteer. Is anybody else volunteering or not?
We're waiting, and I'm happy to wait for someone to volunteer, jump in. And this is public. I mean, so confidentiality is a huge thing in coaching, but this will not be confidential because we're doing a live streaming through Facebook, and it's going out to the world, and it will be recorded and put on Facebook and YouTube, as you well know. So it would have to be a topic that you're willing to be public about. And other than that, it's the rest of the sample session will be exactly the way I've outlined it.
I would be happy to do this with you another time, but today I would actually like to join in and have a look and see what you're about. If you don't mind.
Absolutely perfect. and you can be the observer and not be the participant. So, and thank you for joining us. So I'm not seeing a volunteer. So the alternative here in the moment that I'm thinking about, I could, however, I am very rural area and Wi-Fi may not work. That's Tanya is saying that. Tanya, if you
Peter,
want, go ahead.
I will volunteer. I'll take a topic, which is okay.
Is it Arshna?
Archana,
Yes.
yes.
Arshna, okay. Well, let's go to Arshna then, and I'm going to invite Arshna just to get centered in herself, and to pick a topic that is she is okay to talk about publicly.
So I'll take a moment to ground.
Very good.
Okay.
Peter, can you make me the host so I can spotlight both of you?
Let me do that right now.
Do I need to be on the video, or is it okay if I keep that off?
You can just do the audio and this just highlight me then, Cello. I can just stay the way I'm at.
No worries.
All right. And I am going to just advance this a little bit. Okay, so for those of you that are listening, either live or listening to this as a recording, here's my request to you is to create a safe environment. How do I create that safe environment? What kind of questions do I ask? How does it honor the client's agenda during the coaching session? Okay. And we'll move right into the about 30 minutes for the coaching or for the demonstration of the sample session. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, Peter.
So Arshna, just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, I am.
Excellent. So Arshna, I may lose eye contact with you. I'm going to be looking down and making some notes as we go along here. But thank you very much and welcome to the sample session today.
Thank you.
We'll take about 30 minutes. The first 5 minutes will be kind of describing a little bit more about what coaching actually is, or at least how I do it as a professional coach. If you have any questions during that time, I invite you to ask questions about the actual organization of the coaching. Then we'll spend about 20 minutes going into an actual coaching session with your topic. In the last 5 minutes, we'll be asking you questions about how that experience was for you. Okay, so you good with that?
Okay. Yes.
Very good. So normally coaching is very confidential. Anything that you would say to me normally would be not repeated anywhere to anyone. Because we're doing a live streaming right now, this will not be the case. So I'm going to invite you to pick a topic that is that you're willing to be public about and be known for.
Okay.
And coaching is a proven process. It's been used worldwide to accelerate the development of an individual in their personal and professional development. As much as and a lot can be accomplished actually in one short session. So I invite you just to be yourself, be your awesome self, and enjoy the journey. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
The other things about coaching is that it's 100% your agenda. So you can talk about anything or everything that you want to talk about. It's not my agenda. You'll pick the topic. I will give you no advice. So even if you ask me for advice, I will ask you questions back in terms of how you want to approach it or what options might be available to you. I will keep track of time for us. So you don't need to worry about the time. I'll keep track of the time. And the other thing I ask for you is, do you give me permission to interrupt you if you're into a long story, or I need to move the coaching session along for the sake of the time that we have together? Would that work for you?
Okay, yes.
Super. And lastly, this is, you'll be self-generating your ideas, your options. You'll select which areas that you want to move forward in or not. And that's totally okay. That's just totally okay. Sometimes you're ready to move forward with an action step. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you need time to do more reflection on that particular area of life. And that's just perfectly okay with me.
Okay.
The last question I'm going to ask you before we go into the actual coaching session is, if you were to rate yourself in terms of from 1 to 10, your sense of self-responsibility for creating your own life moving forward, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you currently put that?
10.
10. Wow. Congratulations. Well done. All right. So we've been talking about coaching. Any questions that you have about what I just reviewed in terms of what coaching is all about?
No.
Okay. So then we'll move into the actual coaching session, and we'll start the actual coaching now. So this would be as if you were to call me on a regular basis for coaching, and I hear my phone ringing or I hear the Zoom dinging. So it'd be brum, brum. And I would say, hello, Arshna, how are you today?
Okay. So yeah.
Is there anything that you need to be, to be fully present and clearing your space, clearing your mind, anything at all that you need to do to be fully here?
I would want to get a glass of water for myself. Just give me a second.
You bet. Take your time.
Yes, Peter, I'm back. I'm sorry there was been a lot of noise because I was just asking some things. Yes.
Quite all right. Quite all right.
And I forgot to mute myself 1 minute. Yeah. So you would have heard some voice.
It's all good. It's all live. It's all good.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that I can do to support you to ground yourself? Perhaps take a couple of deep breaths just to kind of get yourself centered and grounded.
Yes.
So I'm going to invite us to just join together and take a nice, relaxing, energizing, deep breath. And easily and naturally exhaling. I invite you again to join me in taking a relaxing, natural, deep breath. And just let me know when you're ready.
Yes, Peter, I'm ready. Thank you for this.
You bet. You bet. My pleasure. So do you have a particular topic in mind that you would like to, explore today in this session with me?
Yes, I will take the topic which is at the top of my head.
Okay. What would that be?
So, I'm working on a leadership model, and it's just that there are two aspects to it. One, I'm doing this project of developing a leadership development model, which is core self leadership, and incidentally, I'm doing it with you. One is I'm pretty nervous about it, okay, because there's so much of it, and the very word saying world-changing visionary, somewhere it feels that it's quite far, and I don't know. There's a little bit of nervousness around that. But the second thing is, which is around, I have the concept, I have the model in mind. However, I think it is a little unconventional or whatever it is, because I have personally believed, and I'm seeing it by observation, that I cannot have a leader developed unless his spiritual part is developed to that extent. And whenever I put forward this concept, I get mixed responses. Some people who understand and believe, they get it. But most of the corporate people, they, even if they say believe, when I talk and interact with them, they say, but try put it in more acceptable words. Try seeing it in, I. So it feels like faking my model, and I don't want to do it.
Okay,
So
good.
I've
Yeah.
what my situation is, I would want to work on the second part, not on my nervousness, but on the model part.
Okay.
And there I would want to see is, how do I come across with conviction to the world, saying this is it, you cannot ignore it, everything in this world is spiritual. I mean, it is spirit. I mean, I don't know why people can't see it. So I want to see that. How do I communicate that?
Okay. So how do you communicate that?
Peter, back to me only. Yes.
Yes, yes, back to you.
So I see that I will have to first use their language. And it's only when I have become an authority and that people respect, I mean, see that me as an authority, then I would be able to explain. Then I think they will be more acceptable to understanding this concept of how everything actually is spiritual, and how leadership is based in spirituality. It cannot happen without that. So that's how I feel.
Okay. So I hear that you're thinking about this as being unconventional, that the corporate leaders typically don't talk in the kind of terminology that you're using, or
Yeah.
they may be uncomfortable with it, perhaps. I don't know what you're there. But by the end of by the end of our coaching session today, what would you like to leave with that you don't have now?
I would have to leave with a roadmap to progress in this direction. And it may be a progress from the level where I am to the next level, even if it's not the final level, but at least there should be a forward movement.
And when you say moving or progressing from the level that you are now to a new level, is that in terms of the articulation or the words or the feelings or what?
Other feelings, etc., and I'm clear on that. It's in
Okay.
terms of how do I convincingly articulate this.
Okay, so the actual articulation, the words that you're going to use.
Yes.
Okay. So if I were a prospective client, let's say that I'm an executive,
Mm-hmm.
and you're describing your coaching model
Mm-hmm.
based on a deep sense of spirituality, how would you say that to me now?
In order for you to be a leader, your heart is to open up to the world or to your people whom you lead. So you will have to be more inclusive. So leadership is more about including the um, including in your own being, including other beings into your own being.
Okay, you have to be inclusive. You have to be your own being.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what do you do for me?
So you connect. So what do I do as a leader to you is I connect
No,
to you.
what do you do as a coach for me?
As a coach?
Yeah,
No.
we're talking about you being my coach. And you said that you are a spiritually based coach.
Peter,
So,
1 minute.
okay.
I am in a class. Uncle se baat kijiye. Yeah. So I'm saying is what I understand is when I explain leadership to you is when I just explain like being more inclusive. And what is your next question now? As a leader, what I do, or what is it that as a coach I do?
What do you do as a coach for the leader that you're going to be coaching?
So I would tell the leader, as a coach, I would ask the leader, what does he do to be more inclusive, and ask him to explore that. Ask him to understand him or her. Ask them to understand what does they mean by inclusiveness. And I would like to even give a metaphor when I explain inclusiveness to them. And to me, that's real, So maybe that could be, I don't know whether that can be explained as a part of, that can be explained while doing as a coach, but that can be explained otherwise.
Okay.
So do I share the metaphor? Yeah.
Sure.
It's so I see that when let's say person A becomes leader for person XYZ, okay, these are those teams. At that time, let's say use systems theory, it's not just he doesn't remain only A. He becomes one another organism. He or she, the leader, becomes another organism which has A plus XYZ as a system. So that's an organism it becomes. And the bigger, the size, let's say it's a leader for 20 people or 20,000 people, that's how together they become an organism. So I would say, let's say an organism, let's say IBM or any other company. Now that CEO and that is leading a kind of organism, which is that organization. So I see it like that.
Okay.
And I see that organization or that thing becomes a thriving living thing, because it has got living things. So metaphor is like in our body, how we have hands, legs, different cells, they are all alive in themselves, right? They have their individual boundaries. So it's like that. All of these people coming together and then becoming another organization or organism altogether. So the leader is one who is into including getting all of them towards that, then leading that. In the sense, he kind of becomes the mind of that organism.
Okay. So I'm going to stop you there. I get the metaphor here, and the organism that forms as the leader that is being coached is part of and helping to create and move forward. My observation is that you started off talking about being nervous about talking about spirituality, or how the leader has to become, has to work on their own spirituality and know who they are. But not once during that explanation of what you do as a coach, did you use the word spirit?
So far I have not used the word spirit, but what I would say spiritual angle to this side is the spirituality becomes more of it's the connecting energy everywhere actually. So the individual being, when he is in a role of leader, or see, once a person becomes a leader, no, it's a being that becomes a leader. A person who's a leader, it doesn't somewhere it would not behave like leader is very difficult to believe. So what I see is that our body and mind, or rather this thing, it's like an instrument we are wearing over ourselves. So it's
Right.
a very advanced gadget, given by God to us. So and this gadget has got, how you open the fan, the walls open up. So it's like, at certain degree they are moving, then you can increase the intensity, etc. And in the same way, we have, this body has a lot of valves, and so this is what we call in chakras. The Indian yoga system explains this entire gadget, and even the use, application, practicability. It's like a user manual. If you see Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, is a user manual to use this body and mind, this gadget. So if you
Okay.
see, yeah.
All right.
So
So hold on, hold on.
yeah.
So we have probably about 8 minutes or so to finish up the session. You started
Okay.
off saying that you wanted to get ask a leader what is more inclusive. Okay, so you talked about a roadmap of progress for you to be able to articulate this coaching model that you're working on.
Hmm.
I think you called it the core self leadership model,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And open up. And how can you, what have you learned about yourself so far in terms of explaining how you would talk to a leader? And well, let's start with that. What have you learned about yourself so far in our session today?
So I learned that I find it easier to explain with metaphor.
Okay. And how can you parlay that into the words that you use for your model? What are the next steps?
So while I was speaking, I also found it very easy. I mean, I felt pretty easy and right when I mentioned Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, and that clearly has the actually methodology. So it basically is about how the human system opens up. But if I start following the same, I can draw the metaphor and simile from there to show what the leader is like and how does one, what does one do to become like that.
Wow.
So I would like to draw, I would like to kind of lean on to Patanjali and say, okay, Patanjali's leadership tips. So maybe I can use that in explaining and articulating the whole model. And
Okay.
and somewhere I felt that when I'm speaking what I'm really believing, after a little while my nervousness disappears. It's when more of the conviction comes to explain that. So
I definitely heard that conviction. I mean, you come through with a force of nature in your voice, in your beliefs, in your knowingness, in the power that you bring, the field of energy that you bring to a potential client that is interested in becoming a core self leader. So what are there any other action steps? What other action steps might occur to you in the moment that you would like to follow as a template to articulate this more clearly?
So I would want to write small snippets, maybe post it on LinkedIn, try testing water everywhere, and in among the corporates, and I will draw it and see. I would want to see. I'm 100% sure. So I have seen that everything in the world has both sides of responses. So I will try and see which is the more, and I think that might build up my confidence, and that can also generate familiarity around it. And then yes, then it's all about getting it published in some known journal, and then everything happens.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so some small snippets out to social media, get some responses back to it, get some confidence in what words are resonating,
Yeah.
and then ultimately publish it in some form or fashion.
Yeah. That's right.
Any other steps that occur to you in the moment?
It feels complete to me on the doing part. On the being part of my nervousness, I feel I have to face it and move beyond it. So it's just that. Yeah, so I feel pretty complete.
And do you have a sense of, in this session, we didn't get to the being part a whole lot on your side, but is there anything in the moment that comes to mind and the being to gain that confidence that you're looking for?
I have to believe in myself. That's it. I don't want to lean on anybody and move on this. I have to believe in myself. Yes.
Have to believe in myself. Have
Yes.
to believe in myself. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that you want to say further or to be complete about leaning on yourself?
Leaning on what you said, believing in myself, no?
And believing
Yeah.
in yourself, yeah.
Yeah. It's like it just feels like reclaiming my power. That's it. Nothing else. Reclaiming my authentic power.
Reclaiming your authentic power. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And does it support you to write that down, or will you remember that? How do you operate in terms of reminders or remembering?
So I do write these things, and
Okay.
I put it on my phones also. So,
Okay. So are you willing to do that for yourself, to believe in yourself?
yeah, I will be not only just referring to it, I will be doing small little things also in the day. Small little things, which gives me that sense of reclaiming my own power, being my own authentic self, taking. So I think that's great for me.
Awesome. Well, we'll bring the coaching session to a close, Arshna, and I want to acknowledge you for the passion that you bring to this, the knowingness that you bring to this, from both sides, from your doing side, what you want to do, that you're committed to in terms of self-commitments, as also from the being side, that connection with spirit, that connection with the greater ecosystem around you. There's no doubt in my mind that you're going to be incredibly successful at this. So well done. Well done. The world needs more of you.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks a lot.
Very welcome.
Really.
So before you hang up, we'll close the session now. And but I have a couple of questions that if you have time, do you have like 2 or 3 minutes, you can answer a couple of questions for me?
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So what did you learn in this sample session, this coaching sample session?
Okay. The first thing I learned is that even in short sessions, it can be very, very impactful.
Wow.
So
Wow.
if I would say, if I really see, you have asked nearly about 3 or 4 questions in the middle part of the coaching session. But they were very powerful, set me thinking, and it did impact. Yes.
Super. And so if you were to articulate, what was the benefit to you personally?
As a coach, I have seen how small session can be also very sharp, and need not really, the coach need not really go around so many things and try to see belief pattern and all. It's just about impact, what it's making. That's why I'm taking one benefit as a coach. As a teacher, yes, I'm taking one benefit. Very important one is that like someday somebody said we will set a step on moon, we'll go to moon. At that time also people laughed at you. So even now, if I say something that in order to become a leader, you better please start working on your spirituality. I may be the initiators in this direction, but that doesn't mean that I have to doubt or drop my endeavor. I must move on to it. Yes, these
Fabulous.
are two great benefits to me.
Thank you. So, would it be beneficial if we were to have a follow-up session, perhaps in a couple of weeks, in terms of, sharing your progress, so the things that you've committed to, and we can do that in a 5-minute follow-up session, or you can send me an email, however you would like to do that. Would that be a benefit to you?
It will greatly benefit me if I'm able to send you emails on little small snippets also what I write, or sometime message you on WhatsApp, etc., saying what is my next progress and all. And even a thumbs up from you will keep me on track, and it will be quite a motivator. And at times when you may just have some view, or maybe just talking to you, or as a coach, it will always feel me that I have someone to give me moral support in the journey.
Very good. I
Yeah.
would welcome that. As you know, I don't give advice as a coach, but I'd be happy to receive those snippets from you and celebrate your progress. I would like to do that very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Archana. So we'll bring this to a close. Thank you so much, Archana, for volunteering within this public space and live space. And we're finishing up here. I think that if my time is right, that was about 28 minutes from start to finish. Again, for those that are listening in here, this is a basic sample session. There's much more elaborate ones that we teach in our training programs, but they have similar elements of tell the client or prospective client up front a little bit about what coaching is, because sometimes they're confused about, well, this will be mentoring, or this will be a place where I can get advice because you're a senior or you're more experienced in this particular area of life. So it's a good way to share with them what coaching is versus what it is not. Then you do a coaching session, and then you do a little wrap up at the end in terms of their observations. Now, the one thing, let me just go back into the agenda that I shared with everybody here. Going back one. There we go. I'm not going to do this live in terms of self-reflection time for me as the coach of, what did I learn? What did I think that I did that was great? And what did I most enjoy about this? So that's, I would do that privately in my journal. But I encourage you after every single sample session that you do to do that for your own learning, to do that for your own reinforcing, and know that, okay, so maybe it wasn't perfect, and maybe there's some things that you reflect on that you could have done better or more masterfully. But I implore you to look at what you did well and great and awesome and enjoyed first and foremost. If you want to make a little tiny note at the end of that journal entry in terms of, I think I'd like to ask this kind of a question instead of the one that I asked at one point. Okay. But look, don't beat yourself up. Use these as a practice to get to be a better coach. Okay. So with that, I'm going to, let me fast forward now into, what are your observations of coaching competencies used? What did you learn as an observer of this session that Archana did a brilliant job of volunteering to be the client, prospective client? And then we'll get into what questions do you have. So first observations, and I'm going to invite you to put these in the chat box. What did you observe me as the coach do, say, be that supported the client, the prospective client? Go ahead and type them into the chat box. What did I do as the coach? Non-judgmental coach, acknowledge the client. That comes from Sushi. Thank you, Sushi. From the client herself, she talks about provided safe space, being non-judgmental. Thank you, Arshna. Dr. Arshna. Sanjeev, listening and creating space, safe space again. Thank you. From the Facebook, Hari talks about Peter's awesome as always. Thank you. Re-energize, follow the process. Deep gratitude. Thank you, Hari. Her agenda fully. Yes, thank you, Tanya. This is not my agenda. This is one of the things that distinguishes coaching is that it's the client's agenda. It's the client's agenda. And oh, by the way, it's the client's agenda. Okay, not mine. Not even the organizations, although they can say what the client wants to develop or focus on during their coaching. But ultimately, on that particular day, that particular moment, it's client's agenda fully. Open-ended questions mostly. Thank you. She talked most of the time. Great observation, Tanya. Again, this is the client. I create a safe space, an open space, an evocative space, encouraging the client to go deeper, perhaps, or broaden their scope of what's going on, or asking them from a different perspective. But hopefully my questions were clear and concise, one at a time, mostly open-ended, meaning that it's not a yes or no or this or that kind of a response to the question. There were a couple of closed-end questions there by design, but mostly open-ended and allowing the client to do most of the talking. Thank you. Yeah. Hari again from Facebook. Yeah, don't give advice. It's not my, it's their life to live. It's their life to develop. And I hold the mindset that they are capable of doing that. If you noticed, I asked how responsible are you for creating your own life moving forward, 1 to 10. She said 10. Now, if they're 8 or 9 or 10, that's probably pretty good. Most of the time they take responsibility for their life. So I know that she is a capable human being, very capable, in fact. You really listened and kept up with her rhythm. Yeah, thank you for that. The way I say that is matching the client's energy, without getting enmeshed in the energy of the client. A nice dance, thank you. Peter's questions were for Archana to explore more. Yes. A coach, as a coach, you don't share your opinions about her passion and how to be a good leader. Yeah, I mean, I've been a leader. I've worked with leaders, for like a long time, okay, for like 40, 50 years now. But who cares? This is her work to do. So it's about her exploration. It's about what she's comfortable or not comfortable with, and not my agenda, not my good ideas. I leave that out of it as best I can. So I don't try to ask leading questions or authoritative questions or directive questions, but as open as possible that I can do. Peter's questions were for Arshna to explore more. Got that. Yeah. An excellent demo. Thank you very much, Peter. Yeah, appreciate that. So fantastic. Great observations. We've got about 8 or 9 minutes left in our live streaming here. So what questions do you have? Any questions that came up for this in terms of how to do this? Why I did a certain thing the way I did? Let me open it up to any questions now. Any questions at all? And if you're on the inner circle with the Zoom, you can unmute yourself and we can hear you audibly, and that'd probably be quicker and faster. Any verbal questions? Sanjeev's got one. Paraphrase key statement to Arshna to listen to what she said about herself. Yeah. Paraphrased. I don't repeat everything back to a client that they said. That takes too long, because they do most of the talking. I want to keep them talking and not listening to me. But I will paraphrase or concisely capture what I think the client is sharing so that I can keep on track with her, which I did in a couple of cases to make sure that I was on the same vibration, right? Same lane. And that's a good skill to develop as a coach, rather than trying to go back and indicate, so the 10 things I think I just heard you say is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's what takes way too long even with that. I can say simply as a paraphrasing, wow, you got a lot of stuff going on in your life right now. Which one of those things would you like to focus on in our session today? Boom. And have them do the choosing. And they can go through mentally the 10 things they just talked about. And the one that's top of mind for them, or most significant, or most important, or most relevant in this space, they'll pick that again. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any others coming through, and I'm not hearing anybody unmute yourself. So I'm going to ask you one more question. Who could you offer a sample session to during this next week? Who could you do what I did and demonstrated in today's live streaming? And not by name. I don't want by name, but you can just say a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, a family member, so that we don't know who even that might be. Could be a distant cousin, it could be a parent. But again, type into the chat box, who could you offer a coaching sample session to during this next week to get practice? This is an awesome way. It's probably the #1 way that you can develop yourself as a professional coach, is to start with the baby steps. Start with the sample session. Explain to them a little bit about what coaching is, what your role is going to be, what their role is going to be, and then do an actual coaching session for, again, you can determine if it's 15 minutes or half an hour or whatever, and then follow it up with questions of similar to the ones that I ask here. What did you learn about yourself? Okay. How was that a benefit to you? One more observation from Sanjeev talks about interrupted a client with the intention of bringing the focus back to the topic. Yep, she started getting off into, which was very exciting, by the way. I didn't want to stop her passion necessarily, but I wanted to, because of time constraint, bring her back to, okay, so how can you use that, or what's the relevance of that to accomplish what she initially set out to accomplish? It's a question from Tanya. What if she were not to have ideas and remain stuck? That's a classic question. I love that one. Let her be in the silence is my simplest answer to that. Do not get sucked into filling in for what she needs to do for herself. And so in a couple places there, she was silent there for, I don't know how many seconds, but it seemed like a long time. So I stepped quiet let her reflect deeper. Maybe it's something in her mind, something that's in her heart, to allow her to say it. Now, sometimes when the client is uncomfortable with that silence, because they're not used to it, frankly, they'll say, okay, so Peter, what do you think? And I said, I think that's a fantastic question. So I'm going to ask it back to you. So what do you think? It's called the boomerang in coaching. So let it cycle back. Don't get what I call hooked by them asking you. Early on, it was very gratifying. Thank you for recognizing me as a leader and as an expert in this area. And so my ego loved that. But as a coach, as a professional coach, it's not appropriate for me to come in and interject, again, my ideas. Or try to, so be in the discomfort of stuck. Be in the discomfort of stuck and allow the client to get through it. Yeah. So people I could coach perhaps as a co-founder of an NGO, very nice. It'd be spectacular. Quality management expert overseas in another country, yes, fantastic. I like that boomerang idea. Thank you, Tanya. All right, we will wrap it up here. Thank you so much. Next week, now that you've gone through the stages that we've gone through already in our first 7 or 8 different classes here, we're going to get into contracting, number 9. So when out of a sample session, it's not uncommon where the client or prospective client says, wow, this is really powerful stuff. Can you coach me? Would you be willing to coach me? And then you talk about what we haven't talked about in this real basic sample session is the business side of it. So that would be the last stage that we're not going to talk about in our series here, but you talk about actually next week we'll talk about contracting to move it forward in terms of here's what I receive from my coaching, here's how often we meet, here's my role, your role, etc. So we formalize the relationship. Yes, I would love to be your coach. Yes, I'd love to be your client. So the contracting then is the next stage of escalating this to a professional relationship. Okay, so you definitely want to come back next week, same time, same station, same everything. This is from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock USA Eastern time. And my intention is to do this on a weekly basis throughout the rest of the year. So with that, stay safe. God bless. Namaste. Be a great coach. Bye-bye.